Let me tell you a couple of things about this show tonight. First of all, here's what's going to happen. I guess you can see what's happening already. Let's say that this is your television at home. About every 15 minutes, the show will rotate 90 degrees. So
there we go.
It'll be like that. Yeah. And then when it's completely 180 degrees, it'll be like that. And then finally on the other side, about quarter after, it'll be like that. And then finally, when we come back down, the show will be just like that. And by the way, thank God for this handy visual aid, huh? Why did we need to show them what's going to happen? It's happening here.
Happening right now.
Hi, Derek.
Hi, David.
It's another Gimmicks bonus episode, and this time we are talking about late night television.
Yeah. I mean, we're a TV podcast, and I feel like we're always focusing on fictional television, but like there are other spaces of TV that have high concept things that are big parts of television history. So like, yeah. I kind of love this. This was an idea that you had to talk about a late night thing. And I love that because I don't know that I would have thought of it, but like late night has done literally high concept structure breaking experimental stuff like for a very long time. So this is, yeah. I'm excited to talk about this stuff.
And we're going to talk about one of the true champions of the bonkers high concept world. But to get started, normally Derek and I's domain is major broadcast network primetime programming, which occurs between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. outside of like the streaming shows that we've talked about, because time means nothing in a streaming world.
Yeah. Or like Saturday morning cartoons or something.
Oh, that's
like
right.
That.
We've done a lot of Saturday morning stuff too.
Yeah.
Or I mean,
and cable.
And
cable shows like Cartoon Network stuff. I mean, but then look, people know what we mean. We mean like traditional TV where you would expect to see it during traditional airing times.
Yeah, which goes from 8 to 11, and then from 11 to 11:30, it's turned over to the network. It's whatever y'all want to do, and that was like station by station. At one point in time, based on your region, you might have watched an infomercial at 11, but most places did the news. That's what I grew up with, was the news.
Same, for sure.
And then from 11:30 onward, that's where we're going to spend our time with this conversation. So Derek, before I talk about how this all came together, what is your experience with programming on broadcast television starting at 11:30 and going on through the night?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the funny things now, like being alive right now, is that it's kind of only been recently that's the first time where it is a time where you would expect people to maybe just never watch anything late night ever. Like, right. 'Cause I feel like throughout the entire history of TV until relatively recently, it's like, if you stayed up past like 10 or 11, more than likely you are probably watching some late night show on a semi-regular basis, even if like super casually, like that's the majority of people's experience. And I think that's what makes it sort of weird living in the day and age we do now, where like, it's not a huge audience for that. It's not the same sort of monoculture that we used to have. Mm-hmm. And I do think that it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know that like young people today will understand why stuff like Johnny Carson and David Letterman and Conan O'Brien were like these institutions, because they were things that everyone was watching. 'Cause it's like, they're just like talk shows where they're being kind of silly in the like very late at night and hanging out with celebrities. But like, there is something I think that really, I don't know, that kind of unifies audiences with that. 'Cause like anyone can get behind just like a charismatic dude talking to celebrities and being a little silly, especially when you're like very tired sitting in bed or like, falling asleep on your recliner or something. Like, it's kind of comforting in a weird way,
Well, and it kind of was your only option also.
Yeah. I mean, for a long time. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because VHS remained kind of inexpensive through the 80s to be able to record things. So even if you were like, well, I'm just going to watch reruns of whatever I've got recorded, that wasn't necessarily as ubiquitous as it would become in the 90s and then moving forward. There was no streaming. I don't know that I should have had to say that, but there's no streaming during like the golden age of these talk shows. And so you couldn't be like, well, instead of watching Carson tonight, I'm going to put on, I don't know what I would stream if it was available in the 80s. All in the Family is running on Netflix, and I'm just going to watch them All in the Family.
Sure.
I'm just going to binge All in the Family. Probably not a great mental health decision.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Those are really meant to be delivered episodically.
Yeah. Yeah. But all of that is to say that, like, yeah, I definitely watch late night. I'm not a, there are people who are obviously huge historians for late night stuff and very, very hardcore fans of it, which I think makes sense. Like it like late night is also so integral to the history of comedy and alt comedy, that like it makes sense for it having this sort of, this very like kind of iconic element to it. And I'm not one of those people. Like, I'm not a big historian for it. Like, I was the most basic casual watcher of that stuff. My generation, I think, was more Conan O'Brien than it was anything else. Like, that's if I have a late night guy that I watched the most of and had the biggest attachment to, it was Conan O'Brien. But obviously, even he was kind of just following in the footsteps of like what David Letterman was already doing with really high concept weird stuff and the changes to comedy, and David Letterman was obviously following the footsteps of like what Johnny Carson was doing. So it's all connected, and I think that's part of the fun of late night and of it being such a long-term institution, is seeing the evolution of it and this connective tissue dating back to like the 50s.
Yeah. So my grandfather, I've talked about him famously on here because he was a big important part of my life, but he didn't have a lot of demands about the television, mostly that it shouldn't be on and we should be sleeping so that we can get up early and pick corn. But we always watched Jeopardy. He was ambivalent on Wheel, but we would watch it if it was on. He was always Jeopardy because it helped sharpen our minds. And then he was an avid fan of Johnny Carson. So from a very young age, I would gain my grandfather's good graces by doing a Karnak bit, which I barely fucking understood as a child and yet was doing, and probably watched some things that were far racier than I should have been exposed to at like 4, 5, 6, and 7 years of age.
Right. I mean, yeah, I think that makes sense. I feel like a lot of, if you were a kid watching late night stuff, it was very similar to like your experience with something like The Simpsons, where it's like you're watching stuff, and because the humor is there's always the silly enough element. Like late night obviously is meant to be for the widest possible audience, right? Like it's meant to be for anyone, which means that like there will certainly be smart, weird experimental things that happen in it, but it's also couched in like very silly, funny humor. Like, oh, we're just gonna make a funny joke about the headline. Oh, look, a confetti thing is blowing up. Wow, look, it's a guy being very silly as he plays a musical instrument. Like there's always something that can capture your attention. So like with The Simpsons, it's like there's gonna be references that you don't get if you are not old enough for it or something like that, but there's still gonna be enough to capture your attention because it's just like a funny, fun comedy variety-ish type show,
Yeah. And then I'm just taking a guess here, but I don't think you're probably a watcher today every night of late night programming.
I couldn't tell you the last time I watched a late night show. And I mean, a lot of people don't even bother with like hooking up their antenna anymore to even get network TV. So like, I'm sure a lot of people are not watching it live. And I can't say that late night's something that I'm like, I need to stream that the next day to catch up. You know what I mean?
Yes. And that is part of the problem of all of this, is that it exists in the moment it exists in. And while I am stoked, and we're going to talk about Archivist as part of this, I am really happy that there are these huge fans of this program who have taken extreme efforts to preserve it and make it available for others. These things have a pretty quick shelf life of no longer being interesting.
I mean, maybe
not interesting. Maybe that's the wrong word.
Yeah, I would push back on that a little bit because I think that you have to be approaching it. I think it's a different type of entertaining.
Yeah.
Because like watching like the specific Letterman episode that we're going to be talking about today and focusing on, I do think that there is a fun historical element to seeing like exactly what was being talked about and on that period of time, right? This was like 1986, I think is what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Like it's really fun to hear who's guesting on it, what type of humor was being utilized at that time, what people were laughing the most at, and like what are things that like maybe are still relevant or like still funny now, right? Like I think that stuff is really interesting, but I do think you obviously you have to be watching it with the sort of historian goggles on like not necessarily watching it just for like passive entertainment, you know, otherwise it probably will come off as kind of boring, you know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because I had a blast watching
Yeah,
it. And I
think it's fun.
I watched a couple other we're going to talk about too. Like,
Nice. That's awesome.
I do love revisiting these, but I also like co-host a podcast about television. So
Right. It's not for everybody for sure. You know, I think that, yeah, I think that makes sense.
my aunt is a huge fan of these, to the degree that when now we call 20 to 30 minutes of our catch-up conversation will be what are the people you know in Washington, as if I have these connections, doing that I'm losing my Stephen Colbert. You have to do something, Dave. You have to call someone and fix this.
Yeah.
And I, listen kindly because it's so important to her. But if she misses an episode, she will watch her automatically DVR the next day. But if too many pile up, she'll just delete them.
Yeah.
And that makes total sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like,
no, totally.
You and I we both messed around with some of those NPR like one a day podcasts that was like, here's the news really quickly in like 5 minutes. Yeah, if I caught it the next day, sure, I'll listen to it. But if it banks up 10 of them, I'm not listening to 10 of them.
They're not made for you to necessarily have to see every episode. I think that's a thing that makes late night, I think, kind of, any sort of daily thing, especially, but particularly late night being comedy too, with writers writing jokes like that. I think it's like, it's hard for people to understand how hard that is to write for that. I don't know. Do you watch Hacks by any chance, David?
I've watched season 1.
Yeah. So season 4, the most recent season, is about late night. It is about the characters working for late night, it's very funny how, like, considering how late night is so in conversation right now for various reasons. And that show literally just did like a deep dive on what it is like to work on, in that case, a fictionalized, but very realistically, from my understanding, portrayed version of fictionalized version of a late night show. And I mean, honestly, watching that, it's silly to say because it's, again, literally a fictional show about a fictional late night program, but it's still gave me so much more respect than I ever had, I think, for late night programming, those types of shows, because it is like, you're trying to make a comedy that won't offend people, but will also capture audiences and won't lose audiences 5 days a week, like for like however many, I don't know how long, I don't remember how long the seasons are, but like many weeks a year. Like that's, thousands of episodes that people have to be like firing on all cylinders for. Like people complain about like, how hit or miss like Saturday Night Live is. And like, that's one a week for like 20 something a season.
Thank you.
Like late night, it's 5 nights a week. They have to fucking hit the monologues, hit the sketches, hit the jokes. And granted, a chunk of that is just, talking to celebrities and interviewing them. But like, you still have to figure out those jokes and how to work around that, like 5 nights a week for many weeks out of the year, every year, with very, very few breaks in between.
One, and I don't know if Hacks dives into this, but I do know, based on the stuff I did for this conversation, that sometimes guests are just fun, sure, whatever. Mm-hmm. But often guests are paying to be there. So they are paying for specific things to be mentioned.
Right.
So not only do you have to be funny, have to keep the audience, you also have to help them sell some book that they're there talking about.
Right.
While doing everything else. It's pretty wild.
I mean, if you look, as podcasters who have guests on that are coming on to plug something sometimes, it's a little bit of extra effort that you have to take to like investigate what they're doing. If it's not someone that you already knew and were already familiar with their work, suddenly you've got to like try to quickly read a book or watch an episode of their show or listen to their podcast, or something like that. Like, and it's like, it sounds silly to be like, oh, well, big deal. You've got to like watch some extra movie or something, but it's like, it's an extra thing you have to add on your list. And that can be hard enough when you're doing like a weekly or bi-weekly podcast.
Yeah.
5 nights a week, making sure that your host is familiarized enough with the work that they surely don't have enough time in their free time to actually engage with. So you as like a producer and writer and director have to like, fill them in on what to talk about and what not to say.
Yeah.
The complexity to it is like, it's a thing where it's like, there's no job there that I could ever take. Like I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle any of that stuff. It's too much too fast. I can't, like it's
Seriously.
really incredible. And the fact that it's been maintained for such a long time, for decades, is crazy when you think about that.
Yeah. you asked, and I had to look at. I had a bunch of notes that I didn't put into my main document, but somewhere between 40 and 48 weeks a year, depending on the year and depending on the show. They are doing 5 a week.
Weeks a year, and it's not like the host is like taking 4-week vacations or something in between those. Like most of the time, they're working them like 98% of those days. Like that's bananas.
Yeah. All right. Well, then let's talk a little bit about the history, because this has been an institution in America for 68 years. It has been around. We're really sort of counting the beginning as The Tonight Show with Steve Allen, though Ed Sullivan's variety program was in the same time slot. A lot of people think about that as the start of late night programming, but the start of the late night talk show was Steve Allen back in 1954. He ran that program through 1954 to 1957. Jack Paar took over for him. Generally, it was just called the Jack Paar Show during that time, kind of dropping the Tonight Show label. And then Johnny Carson came on.
Yeah, which if you watch The Simpsons, you've seen Johnny Carson, basically. So much, basically any late night or Krusty the Clown even parody is just parodying Johnny Carson specifically. Like, I feel like my biggest familiarity of Johnny Carson is not actually watching the Johnny Carson show, but watching The Simpsons parodying Johnny Carson stuff.
Well, I knew who Steve Allen or Jack Paar were without The Simpsons. That was my only reference to those people too, because of course these Harvard guys knew who these people were. I didn't know who these people were.
Right.
Johnny Carson is like the shit. He's the best thing to happen to this model, to the point that he gets named the king of late night, and he is the one who sort of carries it forward. He sets all of the tone that maybe originated with Allen and Paar, but has really come into his own. Every other program that comes out is just trying to claw at Carson. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the competitors during this time.
Sure.
Fox, brand new Fox network is like, we're going to take on late night. We think that we can do this. And so they try to break into the business with the Late Show with Joan Rivers. Rivers was one of the most frequent guest hosts on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. And when Rivers took the deal, Carson said, "You're never invited back here and don't ever talk to me again." It created massive bad blood for them, which is really, really sad, because Joan Rivers on the Tonight Show is fun with Carson. She and him have incredible chemistry. But this was sort of the last straw for him.
I promise I'm not just going to keep up bringing season 4 of Hacks up through this whole recording, but like they kind of I think are alluding to that a little bit, because there's a point when Gene Smart's character runs into Jimmy Kimmel playing himself, and he like basically like threatens to kill her or whatever for being his competitor. It's really funny. It's very, very funny.
Yes. Incredible. Well, combined with the fact that like Carson's really good and Joan Rivers is Joan Rivers and is fabulous at being Joan Rivers, but she's not Johnny Carson. The show is not successful. It renames itself to The Late Show, and then it has rotating hosts until Arsenio Hall comes on and has an excellent run as a guest host. They try to get him to stay, but he's getting better offers from other people who are going to make a show that's just for him that he'll put into syndication. And he later goes and does that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's famously where Bill Clinton played the saxophone on the air, where the gay rights group interrupted him to ask why they hadn't had more gay guests on in 1990, despite the fact that Arsenio Hall was kind of like, for the late 80s and 90s, kind of an awesome advocate.
Sure.
But that's who you want to push, is the people who will actually listen to you, and not, I wasn't going to go to Carson and try to pitch more queer guests.
Sure.
Eventually, the Late Show on Fox lands with Ross Schaefer, a name that's not big enough to get parodied by The Simpsons, so I didn't know about him until this. They cancel it in 1988, and the only other time that they try again is in 1993, where they bring on the Chevy Chase Show.
Yes, I knew this was coming. Now, don't forget, I think it was maybe around this time that the Joker had his short-lived late night show that he'd taken over too, right?
That did not come up in my research. No.
Yeah.
Wait, that's way better than Chevy Chase.
Yeah. Listen to our recent Batman the Animated Series episode to get that, because that's also a Johnny Carson parody in that episode.
Not the last time that's going to come up, Derek.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
The Joker's Laugh-O-Meter will be coming back in this conversation.
Oh, wait, this isn't going to be like the Joker movie reference, is it?
No,
Because that also
no,
deals
no,
with
no.
late night
No.
technically.
God no. God no. Famously have never seen that. I don't know
That's
what
fine.
could compel me. Okay, great. CBS, meanwhile, is also trying to break into this. They start with the Merv Griffin Show in 1969. It runs for 3 years. It is unremarkable.
Mhm.
And then they try again with the Pat Sajak Show in 1989. It ends up being a big flop right away.
Pat Sajak, late night. I don't think that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, well, he's already the Wheel of Fortune guy. Just
Right.
be the Wheel of Fortune guy.
Oh,
That's
he
our
already
legacy.
was doing Wheel and Fortune when they're yeah, that makes sense. I was thinking in terms of like
Yes,
like
before
different
His
spaces.
beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's stupid. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you can't do
What-
both.
Once he's already the Wheel of Fortune guy, that's it. That's all
Yeah,
you're doing.
that's
now.
all you're gonna do for the rest of your life, man.
Yeah. Sorry, dude. Sorry. Not sorry. You're an asshole.
Yeah, he sucks. It's fine.
Okay. Finally, Johnny Carson decides to retire. It's 1992. Frequent guest host David Letterman is the one everyone's got on their mind to take over, including Carson himself. And in 1992, the show gets taken over by Jay Leno.
Our favorite. What did we watch? What is it? Was it West Wing that had the
Oh,
that
that's
had
right.
the Jay
I had to
Leno?
watch all those fucking monologues to see if it was real or not. And I never found it, so I assume it was made up for the show.
They really got Jay Leno to guest star on the West Wing to do a fake monologue that wasn't even funny about what was like
Ugh.
nude Olympics or something.
Yeah, that's right. It was the nude Olympics. Oh, he won for more than just a nose. It's a good joke though.
Debatable.
Yeah. Jay Leno takes over. He's sort of the villain of all of this. I'm sorry, Jay. Movies have been made about you. He has responded that he never really felt the same animosity with Letterman that everyone reported. Letterman, on the other hand, said, "Nope, it was all real." So
Yeah.
hard to know who to trust, but I think I'm not going to trust Jay Leno.
I
on that
believe
one.
Dave Letterman more. He seems very willing to just say what he thinks very
Yep.
authentically most of the time. So
But for better or worse, Leno is sort of NBC's dominating force. He's running the Tonight Show. He's doing what NBC needs him to do for this. And he's going to stay on there until 2009. And that is when Conan O'Brien, who's been doing the after show, is sort of tapped on the shoulder to come up and take over for Jay Leno. Now, do you remember all of this going down, Derek?
not this was like what happened in like what 93, right? Around that time? Is that what
No,
you're talking about?
this is 2009 when
Oh no, you're talking. Okay, you were
yeah.
talking about the actual. Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I was following that because it
Okay.
was like
I
because
thought
I
you
was
would.
because I was a Conan O'Brien fan, and it was like
Mhm.
I mean it was pretty, devastating when he just kind of got thrown under the bus for
Yep.
a worse comedian. Yeah, for sure. I was very team Coco at the time. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I liked Conan. I liked Conan's late night show. I was excited for him to take on the Tonight Show.
Mhm.
I thought that there was going to be a lot of good things happening here.
Mhm.
For those of you who aren't familiar, what happened is Jay Leno said, "I'm leaving." He gave them a 5-year notice,
I didn't realize it was that long of a runway for that. That's
Yeah,
so wild.
which is, first of all, everyone listening, you don't owe your boss 2 weeks. 5 years is a ridiculous amount of runway for them to find a replacement for you.
Sure, but I think it makes sense for like the institution that they're in. I think that
Yeah.
totally checks out.
Yeah. NBC then takes that runway and they take advantage of it. They've got Conan O'Brien on the following show. I'll talk about the follow-up programs in just a second. So they're like, let's bring Conan here. We can replace him on his show with Jimmy Fallon, who we think might be really exciting for the kids these days.
Oh boy.
And then we're good to go. We don't want to lose Jay though. So as part of his like slow exit, he negotiates them to produce a program that's just Jay Leno, and they will slot it at 10 p.m. in prime time. They will take a late night program and give it a slot of prime time. So the stakes are very high for Jay Leno's program to be successful.
Yeah.
It's not successful
Yeah.
at all. No one's
Sure.
watching Jay Leno, and as a result, nobody's staying to watch Conan. So when Leno's night is up, Conan's doing the worst that night. And so NBC executives say, well, let's just switch them. We'll give Conan this 10
Ugh.
o'clock spot, and we'll put Jay back as usual. And Conan's like, fuck you. And the
Yeah, well,
horse
it's terrible. I mean, not only for like obviously just people aren't watching as much during that time period, or during that time slot. But also, like, I feel like Conan's humor is specifically for like people who are like kind of either half asleep in a daze or like 21 years old and are just going to be staying up till 3 a.m. every night anyway. Yeah. Like, that's exactly the zone that he is in. He's catering to like the Adult Swim audience, you know? So I respect him for pushing back hard on that.
And he does. And so he leaves, and we'll follow up with Conan in a second. But then Jay Leno's back. Jay Leno stays on for 4 more years, and then Jimmy Fallon takes his spot, and that's where it is today.
Yeah. Yeah, worst timeline.
Ugh.
Like, we lost, like, in this, you know, I mean, obviously Conan has not had great success after this, but during the time, throwing him under the bus in favor of Jay Leno and Jimmy Fallon, who, like, I don't know, do people just kind of agree that maybe they're like 2 of the worst long-term late night people ever for different reasons, but like, yes, for reasons, you know what I mean?
Both Leno and Fallon have a pretty remarkably flavorless existence. They're just sort of like, both of them have told and will continue to tell sound jokes that have premise, that are written well and are delivered like fine to good, but they're forgettable. Like, I can't remember anything about Jay Leno outside of his chin. And Jimmy Fallon, all I know is that he constantly broke character on SNL and like he's hyperactive. These are the only things I know about them.
And he tussled Donald Trump's hair too that one time. So like, you know, that kind of put him in the trash pretty quickly. And I don't think anyone has forgiven him for that, rightfully so.
Nor should they.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Tonight Show. That's the history of the Tonight Show. But in 1973, NBC goes, wow, we got a pretty good thing going here. We should do another one of these after our late night program and start it at 12:30, midnight 30, and give this a go. And the first thing they start with is The Tomorrow Show with Tom Snyder.
It's a clever title for that. I give a lot of credit for that title.
It's a very clever show, especially when you consider that it's a lot more like the Today Show than the Tonight Show. It's like calm, sedate interviews. There's no studio audience. It's like McLaughlin Group level esoteric conversations about like life and the meaning of the world.
Interesting.
Yes. Snyder is funny, but it's not a comedy show, so that's not really working. And in 1982, we have Late Night with David Letterman. So he starts his work with NBC. Before being, the one who's picked for the Carson show, he's got his follow-up program from Carson. And this is the thing that really solidifies this time block. From here, you'd have Late Night with Conan O'Brien, Late Night with Jimmy Fallon, and Late Night with Seth Meyers, which continues today.
Mm-hmm.
These are typically the more fun versions of the show. I can't speak to Fallon because Fallon has sort of always been his thing.
But like, intended to be that though.
Yeah, because it's a little later. You know, Seth Meyers doesn't pull punches. He does sort of his thing. Conan was amazing in this slot. Letterman was amazing in this slot. These are really fun people doing fun things and having a good time with it, because if you're the sort of person who sends an angry letter, you are asleep by now.
Right, exactly.
Okay, after the debacle with Leno, Letterman goes to CBS to start a new competition show for NBC, and this is The Late Show. It's first called The Late Show with David Letterman. When Letterman leaves in 2015, it will be called The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. We're going to talk more about Letterman when we talk about the episode that we watched, but this is a different version of Letterman. The Late Show version of Letterman is a little bit more on par with Jay Leno. It's a little bit more approachable, especially in the early seasons. By the end, when he's eyeing the door, he gets really weird on this show.
Good for him.
At one point in time, he has a segment that's just called Does This Float?, where he'll look at something and consider whether or not it would float in a body of water, and then they bring out a giant pool and put it in the body of water.
Look, I love the energy.
Yeah.
Like the do not give a fuck energy, which I think is what people liked about like early Letterman too, right? That it's just like, just do weird shit.
Let's just have fun.
And then almost like pretend to be annoyed about the experimental stuff his own show was doing. Like, it's such a funny, silly, weird little vibe.
And then I'm going to talk about CBS also taking on the 12:30 follow-up program, mostly because of one of the greatest villains of history. But we'll start by saying that Tom Snyder from The Tomorrow Show also jumped ship over to CBS and tried to do this Tom Snyder show here in the Late Late Show. It also didn't work. What we generally think of as the Late Late Show was sort of concocted from Craig Kilborn. That's right, the original host of The Daily Show, who was the first one to be in the Late Late Show for what it would actually be.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, but I don't think I ever watched that.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Kilborn on Comedy Central, and so I did follow him over to CBS when he did this, and I don't know. Now that I look back on it, Kilborn, probably someone I shouldn't have been watching any of. It was probably bad for my brain.
Sure.
Oh, but okay. Craig Ferguson takes over for him in 2005. The only thing I really wanted to say here is in 2014, when Craig Ferguson leaves the Late Late Show, he does a parody of Newhart with Bob Newhart, making this the second bonus episode we've done to talk about the ending of the Bob Newhart show, Newhart.
That's really funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. And then James Corden takes over in 2015. The reason I'm so sad about this is that this program was supposed to be weird and wild, and sort of give an opportunity to do different things. And Corden is he's just the host when it happens. Because of the way that the internet has evolved, we're doing our best to conquer digital real estate by releasing clips, and his Carpool Karaoke actually wins the day. Of all of these programs, Corden's Late Late Show was among the lowest in the ratings, but it was the most significantly cultural thing talked about because of this Carpool Karaoke.
Interesting. I mean, I guess that's not surprising. Think about it. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize the actual ratings for his show were that low, considering how big those clips were.
Exactly. Which
Interesting.
is sort of, that's considered to be the new currency. So when we talk about what's happening today, remember that, Derek. Just remember it.
Yeah.
Corden leaves in 2023. It's sort of pandemic related. CBS is rethinking things for this hour. This is when they do At Midnight, fine. And then After Midnight, yes. But After Midnight has recently also gone off the air. So kind of a bummer.
Gotcha.
Meanwhile, cable's doing things around this too. I talked about the Arsenio Hall show already, but I do think it's important to give a moment to say that in 1996, Comedy Central started The Daily Show, which is sort of thought of as the cable version of all of these things, even though the style is dramatically different.
Yeah, I have a hard time. I understand the thought process in terms of that it's like a comedy, that that's a comedy centered on a personality talking to a studio audience and sort of having bits and things that he do that's meant to sort of be aired 5 days a week late at night. But I do think the nature of being a parody news show, not even parody news show, but you know what I mean? Comedically slanted news show is very different than late night. Cause late night and Tonight Show, stuff like that would obviously have news that they bring up in their opening monologues, but it's still mostly centered on being a celebrity interview show about books and movies and things this. I understand grouping them together, but I don't really also agree with grouping them together, but I understand why they are part of the history though.
I think the backing of that is really how people consider them in categories for awards, or how programming is categorized, because you'll see,
because where the fuck else would you consider them?
Right. Right. So, but then John Oliver shows up on HBO. They have HBO's budget. They have some of the best writers in television. And of course it's sweeping awards against fucking Fallon.
Right. But it's I don't think, I mean, not that I want Fallon to win awards or whatever, but I don't think that Last Week Tonight should be included in that, because it's a completely different, the goal is completely different. Also, Last Week Tonight isn't a daily show either.
Thank you. But it's considered in the same breath. It's so wild to me.
That's strange. Yeah. I don't agree with that. I mean, again, I feel like then you go down the rabbit hole of needing to do a significant restructuring of all these categories and everything, because what else would it fit in? And there isn't really anything exactly like Last Week Tonight that really exists, because even with the Daily Show, you can throop it in with that, but then the Daily Show is daily. And I do think that makes a big difference. So yeah, I don't know that it's weird, but also who gives a shit about the fucking awards? You know
truly gives a shit. I think the most important thing for our conversations is that both Last Week Tonight and The Daily Show are taking up that same digital real estate.
Yes.
Of how can we get people to watch our clips?
That is a really good
Yeah.
point. That is a very good point. And I think a lot of younger audiences that maybe previously would have flocked to some late night shows like Conan O'Brien,
Yeah.
for example, like they're not there because they're here with John Oliver and Jon
Yeah.
Stewart.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. You know what's wild, Derek? Because I haven't talked about ABC yet at all.
Oh yeah. I was wondering, I was like, hey, I guess we only talk about like 2 networks.
And I was like,
so far.
God, where's ABC in all of this? Truly and honestly, they were just content having Nightline for the longest
God.
period of time. They would just do local programming and Nightline.
That's very funny, actually. But sure.
They took a swing in the early 90s with Into the Night with Rick Dees, the DJ. It was bad. I can't even find episodes of it anywhere to even watch. And I like Rick Dees as a VJ, or as a DJ. So like, whatever. And then they grab from Comedy Central in 1997, Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher. So ABC.
Yeah.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
That you would do this.
I do think that this, like, Bill Maher, I hate him a lot, but also he is a complicated figure because he said a lot. Like, he has only gotten progressively worse the older that he's gotten. And he's kind of at the nadir, I think, of what he will be as a person at this point in his life, and is just kind of a trash human being. But he did say a lot of things that I think were correct and needed to be said /during this time period. He also said a lot of shit that was awful during this time period as well.
Yeah.
He's never been totally free and clear, but you know, I think that I agree with some of the stuff that he was saying politically during this time period.
It was important for someone to be at that bullhorn. I just wish that they also weren't transphobic so often.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I don't want to take Bill Maher's side on anything.
I agree. But
I think it's important to recognize why like liberals were very in favor of him, you know, during like the late 90s and early 2000s, especially because he was kind of saying things that I think a lot of people, I mean, I hate saying, like, he was saying things a lot of people were afraid to say. That means like terrible things now, but it was like on the right side of, it was like the right version of doing that at the time, I think, though.
I'm not going to lie. Being critical of 9/11 on September 17th was a bold fucking move. And I don't disagree with the things that he said.
Yeah, the shit that got him canned, I'm like, he was right, though.
But
like, it was maybe a little too early to be saying it, but he was right.
But like, read the room, my brother, because advertisers began a campaign of wanting to pull out after that. And that is what eventually led to him being canceled. This will be important for our conversation because ABC did cancel a talk show host in its history for making 6-day-old comments about 9/11.
Yeah, like, I don't blame them. I think maybe a hiatus would have made more sense than a full-on cancellation. Yes. But also fuck Bill Maher, so whatever. It's fine.
Landed on his feet. He got a cushy gig with HBO. He never gets nominated for awards.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kimmel is the one that comes then in to fill that slot because they are still interested. And in 2003, ABC creates Jimmy Kimmel Live, and it goes on air to this day.
I didn't realize it started in 2003.
Same.
I didn't realize how long he'd been doing that.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. He did start at a later time and then like progressively moved earlier. It's kind of funny because the show started at midnight, which meant it split the difference between NBC's program at 11:30 and its program at 12:30. So like, it was sort of demanding the audience change their mind, and eventually Kimmel is the one who ended up changing.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, I never watched that early stuff for him, but I feel like probably, I have to imagine, because he was coming from like The Man Show and things like that like probably what he was doing in his early days are very different than I think what made him start going viral a lot more within the last decade, I think.
Would you believe that it's actually it's a little tamer than you might be thinking?
Really?
It was a little bit more cut from the cloth of all of the rest of these shows.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was a little bit edgier, but he was sort of the later night guy. It would be nothing dissimilar than what I might see on Conan. And he didn't take really big, weird swings like Conan and Letterman would take, but it was pretty consistent early on. Like, he does a monologue, he interviews guests. They're kind of the run-of-the-mill people. He says some things that are a little bit racier, but not, I mean, I'd put them on the Letterman level, truly.
Yeah. It's just so funny because I still think of like Kimmel and Fallon and like Craig Ferguson as being like the new crop of like late night people. And I'm like, oh, they've been doing this for like 20 years. Oh God.
Yeah. It's pretty painful.
It's weird.
That takes us to today, and part of why we had talked about doing this bonus episode is that, few weeks ago, this is in the news, pretty big. But there's been a lot of framing about these programs not doing well. And I've got to tell you, there's certainly ways to tell that story with viewership numbers and Nielsen ratings. There's also ways to talk about that late night has never been bigger as a space of sharing clips and sharing interviews from people. So I think the value to pay to be a guest on these programs has increased, but the value to Pfizer to tell you about their new drug that will make you less sad has decreased.
That is really interesting.
Yeah. So if Wicked is paying for Ariana Grande to be interviewed by Fallon, great choice. That's probably going to be more valuable because those clips will end up shared more frequently. There's so much digital real estate about that. But the like, come to Walmart because we cut prices on potato chips, which used to pay your bills, that's no longer valuable. Right. And it's just a different way of thinking about the market.
Yeah. I mean, and even like, I feel like I still, for even before all of this stuff happened with Kimmel recently, like I definitely would see clips from their monologues or like little sketches and things like that would always go around, like to varying, and like to varying degrees of hilarity in those cases. But like those things would, you'd see those things all the time. That I guess I never really thought about it because you kind of take it for granted. But yeah, that is a really interesting way of framing it.
And the business model is to hook you with that. That's the thing that goes viral. And the autoplay is the video they want you to see next, which are the interviews.
Sure.
Okay, fine, whatever. Or hire me to be your business consultant. I will happily give you an hourly rate, television. But let's talk about Colbert and Kimmel, because that's sort of the topic du jour. This summer, in July, CBS announced that it would be canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert in May of 2026, a 10-month runway. 2 weeks earlier, Paramount had settled a lawsuit with citizen Donald Trump, not acting in any official capacity, who was suing them based on editing that was done that he felt like was portraying his opponent, Kamala Harris, in a better light than she should have been portrayed. They didn't want to go to court about it, so they settled. And as part of their settlement, they were given certain promises and assurances about their upcoming merger with Skydance. No one has officially said that we kicked Colbert off the air as a result of this settlement or as a result of the merger, but it is suspicious.
Yeah. I mean, I know that technically Donald Trump, filed the lawsuit as an individual, but he also was and is the president of the United States who's asking for a show to be pulled off of the air.
Problem.
So,
that's the problem. And the filing was in 2024. It was before the election was before he was sworn in, but his name, like on legal documents, is still President Donald Trump, because once you carry that title follows you no matter what the fuck. If you paint little paintings or if you like sit on the peanut council, like that's who you are now.
Yeah, and that is the weird, the perfect little way they're able to wiggle in there to do it, where it's like, it's not government censorship because the government didn't say to do this. Just a guy who was, the former president who was then elected president very shortly after is the one who told you to do it. But that's not the same as government censorship, right?
Yeah. And then there's wacky stuff about like where it got filed, and like it was filed in Texas because Texans were the ones who had to see this. Okay, bitch, it was a national. Everyone saw it. Like, whatever.
What the fuck?
I can't. But okay, so that's suspicious. That's weird. Nobody likes that. Not only are they moving Colbert off, but they're stopping the show altogether. And that's what I think catches everyone really by surprise. Yeah, CBS came late to this, but they were still in it. They had a major program that was doing very well. So to let the show go in its entirety felt weird.
Yep. Because in his show, like you said, like the ratings were really good for it, right? I mean, at least like relative to any other late night stuff that was happening.
And again, if you look at your bread and butter coming from the people who pay to be on there to promote something, you're doing better than you used to do. Then we get to September 18th of 2025. In his opening monologue, Jimmy Kimmel says the words, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them." because of these comments, a shitstorm just flies around Jimmy Kimmel, and Brendan Carr threatens FCC action. Nexstar and Sinclair Broadcasting announced that they're going to pull the show, and ABC pulls it nationally. They get massive backlash, and it is back the next week.
It's one of those things where, you know, when it's happening, I mean, this obviously is so in such recent memory for people, so we don't have to like rehash what was going on. But like, I do think that like hearing about the initial news that like Jimmy Kimmel's getting canceled, which my first instinct, I'm saying like, I don't care, like canceled, whatever, I'm not watching it. But then it's sort of like getting canceled because of complaints about his criticisms of the government. That it's like, that's weird. And then you listen to his actual fucking monologue that he was being canceled over, and it's just like, this is the tamest shit.
Thank you.
He himself has said more intense, piercing things on his own show before. Like, why is this?
Yeah.
Why is this the one that took it over the edge? You know, and it's just because, you know, they were just looking for any in to make the dominoes fall. And I think probably bolstered by the Colbert cancellation too, that it's like, maybe we can just make this happen to everyone that we don't like.
Right.
You know?
Right. Well, and I'll offer another perspective on this, which is I think that over the last 3 weeks, I guess, 4 weeks as of recording, there have been a lot of test balloons of what can we do to take this thing that we're all claiming as a big tragedy and gain political power off of it, which is the death of Charlie Kirk. And I think Jimmy Kimmel is one of them. I think the most recent attacks against Dead End Paranormal Park is another test balloon of someone who went and looked for comments about Charlie Kirk, took them out of context, found a thing to attach it to, which was transgender hatred, and tried to again say, can we make this a thing to score political power?
For whatever reason, the Charlie Kirk thing has just really captured people's attention in a way that very few things have. I mean, considering how much shit is constantly happening every fucking day, every tragedy that happens every fucking day now, that's, for whatever reason, that's just the one that has kind of stuck out and has been really, really sticky with people. And yeah, they've really weaponized that in every way that they can. And I agree, it's sort of like really testing the waters of like, well, how far can we take this? Who can we silence for any reason just tangentially related to that one, to the name Charlie Kirk?
And the results aren't good if that was your playbook, because it hasn't been working. Kimmel enjoyed some of his best ratings upon being back on air. They have cooled in the past week or so, which is
sure.
They've gone back to normal.
Makes sense.
Which is fine.
Also, people stop talking. Like, people who claim to deeply care about the assassination of Charlie Kirk don't give a shit or talk about it anymore.
Yes, to the point that I spent an uncomfortable amount of time this morning looking at the Twitter accounts of people who had a big reaction to the Dead End Paranormal Park news, who are, there's a lot of them who are talking about Love is Blind Season 9, which dropped this Friday. And so it does tell me that this was a lot about hate and a lot about anger and a lot about mobilizing all of that in lieu of the actual impact that it has made on business. Disney lost a lot more from its decision to ban Jimmy Kimmel than it stood to make. Netflix is enjoying a bump in their stock prices over the past 3 weeks.
That's really funny. Like, I don't love Netflix as a corporation, but I'm like, you know what, guys, get it in this case. That's fine.
I'm like, can you believe that I'm like, even with a slightly happy tone, talking about the stock market? Jarek, I hate the stock market.
Oh, it sucks. It's all stupid. That's the thing. All of this is so dumb.
Yeah. So what this really ends up being all about is this stymieing free speech, or is this just a cooling effect of what we do with entertainment programming, which, as the networks monopolize and as things get consolidated, will become a little bit more homogenous? And that, I think, is the bigger issue with what's happening today, is that we're not going to have as many big swings as we used to, because it's going to be the most Jimmy Fallon experience in late night moving forward.
Wow, what a statement. That really sets the tone, doesn't it?
Sorry.
Like, I don't know. I don't really believe anything. I'm just here and I'm just talking.
Yeah, gosh.
And not being funny and breaking at my unfunny jokes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, but let's talk about something fun now, Derek.
Yes, please.
Because I had been sitting on a couple of these and I didn't know which one to bring up, and then because of the late night stuff, I was like, oh, let's watch this and have a chance to talk about it. But we're going to talk about Late Night with David Letterman. This is his 12:30 program that aired on NBC, and David Letterman was frequently doing high concept episodes with this television program. I'm going to talk about some of the earliest ones, and then we can talk a little bit about the episode that we watched together.
Sure.
But he did a ton of these, so this is a selection.
Yeah, sure.
The first one, from as far as I can tell, was in September of 1983, where Letterman did the show from home because he was waiting on the cable guy.
Hi there, I'm David Letterman, and welcome to the show. We got a great show for you tonight. Let me tell you what's going on. A couple of years ago, it seemed like a couple of years ago, I signed up to have cable television installed here at my home. And as you know, if you've ever had to deal with cable TV people, they make you stay in your home all day and wait for the guy to hook it up. Well, this is my fourth pass at getting it hooked up, and I really didn't want to screw this opportunity up. So that's where I am. That's why I'm here.
That's fun.
It ramps up a little bit in November of 1983. He decides to do a bit where people in the audience can decide what's going to happen next, like a choose your own adventure. And there is literally a giant applause-o-meter that tests the decibels of sound that is made by the audience in a visual mechanism to make an A or B decision.
I love this, and I think that should be implemented way more in general
Yes.
across the board.
Based on audience vote, before and after every commercial, the band played the Gilligan's Island theme.
That's really funny.
The guests, Terry Garr and Dr. Ruth.
Interesting.
The reason I'm bringing up guests is that they'd still do all of the normal things while they're doing this ridiculous other thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, like, on one hand, I'm sure you could be a guest and be a little bit annoyed that maybe you're being overshadowed by the gimmick. But on the other hand, it's a higher likelihood that people are going to be watching because they're surely advertising that there's going to be a gimmick happening.
To the point that Terry Garr says, I'll only come back for these weird episodes.
That is hilarious. Okay, you know what? Good. I love it. Good job. Good on you, Terry Garr. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm just going to breeze through a couple others that I loved in the back catalog. February 84, they do the episode with the image reversed, which is, it's nothing. It's kind of nothing except Dave puts a lot of things up to the camera for the camera to see. And so they were all backwards. And in the episode, he went out of his way to show more news clippings, more covers of magazines. And at one point in time went back to the control booth, was followed by a hand operated camera, and was like, how do images work? And the tech literally talks about how images go from a camera to a screen.
That's
was
cool.
like almost educational.
That's pretty cool. I gotta admit. Yeah, I like that.
Terry Garr's return was on an episode called Too Tired to Go on for a show, and they just filmed it all back in their offices. In September of 86, the show re-airs a past episode from February, but they hire the English dub voice cast from Speed Racer to redo all the lines.
I need to see this. I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
People called into NBC because they thought that there was a huge mistake because the sync on the lips is perfect, but it is not David Letterman's voice.
Right. Oh, I need to watch this. This sounds so bananas.
And then we've got the one that we're here to talk about, which is in December of 1986. They ran a deal where they were going to rotate the image on the screen 360 degrees over the course of the episode.
Tonight, another experiment, another step forward. Thanks to the technological geniuses at RCA and General Electric, tonight we bring you the 360-degree image rotation television program.
Yeah, they did.
I told Derek he only had to watch 5 minutes. If it wasn't your thing, you didn't have to keep watching. How much of this did you watch, Derek?
I watched through all of it. I would sometimes skip through some of the stuff.
The interviews.
Like, you know, if it was just like once the interview got started and they got past the initial jokes, like I wasn't really that interested, so I would skip through some of it. But I did watch technically from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Because I also was like wanted to see what they would do once the camera got, you know, rotated a full 360 degrees, which is a little bit anticlimactic, but it definitely kept me hooked, you know?
And big props and thanks to Don Giller, who is the person who has essentially saved this program, and has documented with photographs all of the videos that he took, the CDs he burned them to, the databases he continues to maintain to host the video files, and host them all on YouTube as well. The link that he put up to this one, he also did us a huge solid in that he showed the rotating image as it was displayed on screen, and then he used a computer program to keep the heads always going up, right? I don't know how else to say that.
So you can, which is fun because like part of the fun of this is that some of them, even the guests will like play into the rotation. Like they'll see themselves on the screen, you know, on the other side, and will like try to act like the entire studio is actually rotated that way, which is really fun. And it's extra fun to then see everything right side up and see them doing basically like the Star Trek ship shaking actions,
Yes!
you know?
Yes. It's so funny. I thought Peter Ustinov, like, who was there to talk about his UNICEF book.
Oh my God. That's the thing. When you mentioned that like these shows still have the regular guests, they technically go on like normal alongside the gimmick. This is like maybe one of the more absurd aspects to it because they're truly like, you could ignore it if you wanted to. Like the guests could absolutely ignore the rotating camera thing if they wanted, because nothing is actually changing on the set that they are on. Everything on the set is exactly the same. It literally is just the camera itself that is slowly rotating. I think it's like about every 15 minutes, it will have rotated 15 degrees, I think, right? But it's like constantly rotating, constantly moving. But like when you're a guest on there, like who fucking cares, right? Like it's not actually affecting you. So for Peter Ustinov to be coming in again for like, you know, talking about something very serious, he is more into it than I think anyone else on the entire show. Like he walks in and is like acting like he's like having trouble. Like he's like climbing across the chairs, like as if he's about to fall off of the edge, and like keeps it up for a while. And if I remember correctly, don't they have one of the notifications that they've like done a full 90-degree angle and he like has a big reaction to it and everything? Yeah. He's so into it. It's so funny.
I loved when he looked at himself and he's like, upside down, I kind of look like a man with a beard. And I'm a bald man. The chin is the top of my head and I'm wearing some like weird hat. And I was like, oh my God, he is like invested in this. This is so wild for a man who is like part of the UN Council of Human Rights. Part of the interview that Dave Letterman does is like, what was it like meeting Gorbachev to talk about the future of Russia?
Yeah, it's so weird. Which, do you think that was part of their calculation to like get one of their most like potentially like serious guests in terms of like interview content on for a silly gimmicky episode? Do you think that was intentional, or did that just happen to be a coincidence?
I do think that it was a coincidence because it per Ustinov, because he's been interviewed about this. He said like, I was just in town. Like this is just when the schedules worked out, but I had so much fun doing it. And I wish all of my other interviews were as good as this.
That's so funny.
I mean, it is a little jarring to go from like, I look like a bald man with a beard to like, I talked to one of the largest leaders of the world about like what peace means in the future. And here's my book about like saving children's lives with the UNICEF.
Yeah, but also like, again, you're kind of hooked, right? Yeah. It's like a thing where it's like, I don't know that I would... It's not that it isn't distracting to see everything like at a weird angle and constantly moving. Like there probably is some people that like it made them like give them motion sickness watching this, but it's also not so distracting that you can't hear what's being said or pay attention to it. So I think that like there is something kind of enchanting by just being like, but what's it going to look like in another 15 minutes? Yeah. Like how weird is it going to be like that? And so you end up sticking around and paying a little more attention than I think you otherwise would have, and then end up like hearing more of what they're talking about other than just kind of zoning out or falling asleep, you know?
A lot of work seems to go into this episode for something that is just kind of like a bit, which is fine.
It's just, I mean, yeah, that's the thing that I appreciate, because when I first started, I was sort of like, I don't know if I get it. Like this, I don't really find this very funny. But then the longer it went, it's like, oh no, this is just a commitment to the bit, is what this is. That is all it is. It is just, they found a bit. And like, no, there's not a big thinker joke or anything about this. There's not anything, there isn't anything to get. It is just sort of like, I don't know, what if our camera just never stopped rotating? And the joke of it isn't that the cameras are rotating. The joke of it is that they are truly committing to the bit for a full hour. Yeah. Everyone is on board on it and treating it like it's a very serious, important thing, an innovative thing that they're doing on television. Like that is the bit. And I have so much respect for that.
Yeah. And Derek mentioned it, but every time they would hit a either 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or 270 degrees, an announcement would come on that would alert them to where they were, and then it would add miscellaneous information with the announcement that seemed
like the temperature
Yes.
or like the elevation or barometric pressure or whatever.
but it seemed serious because it was like a klaxon wanging at you, and then it
Yeah.
would be like, don't take flash photos.
Yeah, right. That's kind of the joke of it, is that it's treated like it's this, because like Letterman opens the episode with this monologue about like the innovations of in the history of television and things that they were able to accomplish with experimentation, and that this is another thing, as if like a rotating camera is going to be an important part of TV going forward or something. And I do think that like part of Letterman's appeal was that he was this kind of, his persona on a show would often be kind of like this prickly guy who was like a little bit too above a lot of these types of silly bits.
Right.
So that like the silly bit is happening and he's almost like kind of annoyed by it, and like not taking it seriously. But then by the end of it, he's kind of had a whole arc of just sort of like, you know what, never mind. This actually is pretty great that we're doing this. Like it's just the perfect sort of alchemy to make all that work and hit.
Yeah. It's absolutely incredible. They reach the end and they're with Peter Miller, and it does sort of fizzle, I think, at the end, which I do think is kind of a bummer, but
It loses steam.
otherwise
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very cool.
But there are dozens of these if you all are interested. And like big credit goes to Don Giller, who I've mentioned a couple times. He's got this YouTube. That's the one that we shared. He has done an incredible job with archiving and sort of creating a database of how to search what happens on episodes as well, who guests were, what the musical act was. He's sort of a walking encyclopedia. And he, of course, was one of the moderators on alt.letterman.whatever, like old internet. So it's just kind of a fun way for us to also talk a little bit about preservation, because NBC Universal has lost nearly all of their recordings of Late Night with David Letterman. So it is Don Giller who is like the source of all of this.
It's just wild. I understand, why like early Super Bowls or early Doctor Who's and stuff like that are lost, but it's like, this is the fucking like late 80s. Like that, there's no reason that this shit should be lost, and like not like an unpopular show. So it's really shocking that they let them get lost. Like who is responsible and failed at their responsibility?
Yeah, what I guess I will offer per Giller is it's not just Late Night with David Letterman. They also lost a bunch of Today shows, which I guess is a really big deal. But I don't know that Derek could pay me enough to like watch old episodes of the Today Show to like find something. But that also, it was important. It did happen. We do archive it in a critical way now. I guess I don't know why that wouldn't have been a big deal in the 80s. But like, the Today Show, I could only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, any of that stuff that's like a major part of culture. Obviously,
Yeah.
it's always very weird when it's just like care wasn't really taken to preserve them, and it's just like no one will ever see them again. Oh well.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, and we've talked around Lost Media, but like you do some pretty substantial work around like being an amateur archivist. Chris, who's our past guest, Chris Cummins, does a lot of this as well. Like it is it's hobby, but it's also like really important to like sometimes you're going to be the only one who's got it. That's kind of wild,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, I mean, you never know. I mean, it's sometimes it's things where it's just like, I don't know, you've got this cool thing on tape that maybe no one else has, that you taped off a TV 20 plus years ago, and it's like, maybe no one will ever care, but also maybe someone will. Maybe there is something on there that is really important to someone, or, features an appearance by an actor that like was never seen again after that, and they would actually love to have their one commercial appearance as an extra in it or something. You never know. So
I think our memories are so tied to having something to evoke them. So without digital preservation like this, without efforts of professionals and hobbyists and everyone sort of working together in this space, you might just constantly left with that nag of like, did I ever see or experience this thing? Because without some sort of like tethering thing, you'll never know. And I don't know, just going through a lot of what Don Giller wrote about this made me a little emotional, just because he really genuinely cares and loves Late Night with David Letterman.
Sure. I mean, and I think a lot of people do, so it's not, and not everyone has the resources or time or energy to like put into archiving them and preserving them. So it's very cool that there's someone out there who is doing that.
Yes. And while he has great profiles in the New York Times and Vulture, you can read it from his mouth directly. He is a very active blogger, so you can read everything he thinks.
Love it.
Well, Derek, this was so much fun. Do you have anything? Yeah. I don't know that we'll come back to late night. Maybe one day, because Conan did some pretty weird fucking show.
And I do think, and I think just acknowledging that, like, you don't have to be a fictional scripted show to do a high concept episode of something. I do think that is cool to acknowledge, and I think it is a bit different. We have to approach it differently as a podcast, which is why, we're not going to be doing regular episodes on this or like reality TV necessarily to the same extent of scripted stuff. But I think it's important to not ignore that happened, because it is still a big part of TV history and pop culture history, and our collective history and communal memory and things. So I think it's very, very cool.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining Derek and I to have this conversation. Of course, if you want to support Gimmicks, you can give us a little tip by buying us a coffee at ko-fi.com/gimmicspod. And of course, you can follow the podcast on Blue Sky and Instagram at gimmicspod. And email us if this generated any thoughts of yours at gimmicspodcast@gmail.com. But I guess we'll just for now say, until next time, friends, keep being weird.